Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, edition 169, week 32 of 2024. Of course, the show is available on all leading digital audio channels. If you would like to get in touch, of course, you can connect with us on email, editor@sandtontimes.co.za, or connect on social media @Sandton Times, and visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And always welcome your questions, your comments, your feedback, your input. All of those are reviewed and read, and it was great to hear from the Greater Sandton Times Hour Nation. A special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time, if that's you, if you've made some time to tune in live or at a later stage. It's good to have you join in on the show, as well, of course, our regular listeners to the Sandton Times Hour in Johannesburg, Pretoria, across South Africa, everywhere else in the world, online or on air, wherever you are. I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandtonland. As always, my introduction to my Italian sidekick, Vincenzo, behind the mixing desk once again. And Vincenzo, yeah, you're absolutely right. You've passed me a little note here just to remind everybody that if you haven't voted yet for this show in the APVA Awards, Africa's Premier Audio Awards and event, please do so, because it's the last week for you to do so, and every vote counts. And let me quickly fill you in. There's a link for this vote, if you want to vote, in the show notes, or on the social media pages, or on the website. We put it all over the place. You can hop on there, and you can cast your vote for the Sandton Times Hour for the category Podcast of the Year. So the bigger the show becomes, the bigger the guests will be. And of course, we can do so much more and so many more exciting things. And of course, I want to thank you for your support in advance. So in short, give us a vote for Podcast of the Year. The entries close, or the voting closes, on the 10th of August, 2024. This week is the last week, so just take a second and do it, and we would be forever grateful. And before I miss another important thing, let me just also wish all our lady listeners a very happy Women's Day coming up this week in South Africa. And I hope you've got something wonderful planned for the day or for the week. It's a short week. I hope you get spoilt, and also it's going to be a long weekend. So I hope you've got something really interesting planned. And if not, if you're just kicking back at home, that's also fantastic, and also some well-deserved rest and relaxation. I'll be taking a short trip to the bush, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's been well over a year, if not more, that I've had a chance to visit the bush. And you know, you just regenerate when you disconnect from city life and just take in nature. Looking forward to that. Not too much to report back on this week. It has been a busy one. Not too many events, but I did have a fantastic breakfast with Investec this past week, who marked their 50th anniversary. And it was really insightful, because they took a bit of time to explain the history of the business, how the name came along, and of course, how the zebra logo came along, which is something that they are synonymous with. Really great time to spend, and they've got the most incredible venue that they built in the heart of Sandton as part of the bank offices. And it was just wonderful to see that, because I remember it was being built just before or during lockdown. And the big question was, well, would it ever be used? Because, you know, we never knew if we were ever going to come out of our homes. It was used this week, and what a great celebration it was. So, what are we talking about this week on the show? Well, in a bit, I'll be catching up with a very familiar voice to many. This time, he's stepping away from the microphone and in front of the camera for a fascinating look at Africa's rich history. You don't want to miss this one. It's going to be a great chat. Then I'll be looking at a developing trend of people choosing to wine and dine earlier and earlier. Are you one of those people? Have you decided that you don't really like going out too late at night, or even not going out at night at all, and rather having sort of a late lunch or an early dinner? This is going to be a great chat, and there's some really great new data that's come out around this. And finally, one of South Africa's leading dining awards is getting underway, and there's a few developments on that front, and I'll be finding out a whole lot more about that. So all this and a little extra in the next hour.
Show some love.
subscribe, share,
Leave a review and rating for the Sandton Times Hour
on your favorite podcast app now.
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour.
And I have the pleasure of working with my next guest for a bit of time in my career. I think it was about sort of 4 or 5 years, we got to spend some time at a similar radio station. And it's been, 15 or 20 years now that we last saw each other. But it's great to be chatting to him again. He's hosting a show called Great African Mysteries on the History Channel as of the 3rd of August 2024. It's on DSTV Channel 186. And it is the one and only John Robbie. And John Robbie, it's great to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Alex, great to be talking again. I last knew you were a youngster. Now look at you. You look like a movie star.
Oh, John, thank you so much. Too kind, too kind. But I mean, a lot of people will remember you from your talk radio days. And obviously also you did a lot of sports television as well. And what motivated you to go to a show like Great African Mysteries?
Well, like everything in my life, it sort of happens by accident. I fall into things, without getting all spiritual. You sort of wonder, is there a sort of a plan? I was invited to speak. I do quite a lot of public speaking and MC work, that sort of thing. And the History Channel had a sort of a relaunch about 3 years ago at the Daytona sports car place. And they asked me, would I speak? And they said, look, would you give it a little bit of guts, give it something in? And I basically talked about history and talked about how I hated it at school because it was so badly taught. And the key to history is that it's so exciting. It's about people. It's about adventure. It's not in straight lines. It's in jagged lines and disasters and wonderful things that happen. And I was quite scathing about often the way history is presented. And a lovely lady called Naz Khan came up to me from the History Channel and said, I like the cut of your jib. We're going to work again. And of course, I didn't hear anything for a while. Everything in television, as you know, works much slower than it does in radio, which is immediate. And then, of course, COVID hit and it all went away. And I thought, I actually forgot about it. And then I got a phone call from Naz who said, do you remember me? We spoke. And I said, yes. And we said, we've come up with this concept. Would you like to host it? And I absolutely loved it. And I met Sean Clark and another lady called Helen, who were the producers in that first series. And they, like me, shared this passion for history, for telling the real stories. And also, instead of just American or European stories, it was African and South African stories. So we did the first series where we looked at the mysteries of the Kruger Millions, the Homo naledi out at the cradle, and the Helderberg mystery. We also did one on great African escapes. And the reaction was extraordinary. Everywhere I go now, people stopped me and asked me, when's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? And I'm delighted to say, after a lot of hard work, we've put the second one together, the second year together of mysteries, and I think people will love it.
How does this build on your first season in terms of, kind of the stories you've decided to go with and sort of how you've researched it?
Well, the first season, the producers, before I got involved, they came up with a sort of a list of things that were mysterious, but weren't sensational or silly. They weren't, I don't know. I mean, you've got to be careful what you say these days, but they weren't looking at supernatural or anything like that. This was hard history and based on fact and based on research, but obviously a lot of questions left. Hence the mystery side of things. So I was delighted when, after the first series, as I say, there was a huge reaction to it, and a number of people approached me about things. And one of them was Paul Ziller, whose sister happens to be quite a prominent politician. And he came and said, look, have you heard of Thulamela? And I'd never heard of Thulamela, this civilization up in Pafuri in the north of the Kruger Park. I'm as we speak, down in the south of the Kruger Park. And he said this incredible civilization, hundreds of years before colonials came to South Africa, was trading with Iran, was trading with India, was trading with China, for goodness sake. It was an advanced civilization. And I sort of presented that to Sean Clark, the producer. She went up and visited and said, this is extraordinary. The other one was the Frida Fort Dome, this amazing, everyone's heard of it, just down by Parys, where something hit the earth millions of years ago. And on research, you realize that this hit the earth 1 billion years before the incident that killed the dinosaurs, and it's also twice as big. And it basically upturned the earth. The only other examples they can see in the solar system, one on the moon and one on the moon of Jupiter, one of the moons of Jupiter. And for goodness sakes, it's just down the road. And it's the most amazing story. The whole earth upturned, and that's why our gold deposits were so deep. The rest of the world had gold, but it was all eroded away, weathered away. And that's, if you think about it, one of the reasons for South Africa's very checkered past, because of the gold being underground and therefore preserved. So it's got huge, it's a hugely interesting geological story, but also it has massive, massive repercussions in terms of history in South Africa. So that came in. And the other one was the quagga, which everyone knows was basically hunted to extinction, this thing with a brown bum and looks a bit like a zebra. And then the amazing story that for 38 years, after a scientific discovery, 38 years ago, somebody took a little bit of fat from the skin of a quagga, sent it to Los Angeles to check whether it was an extinct species or an extinct subspecies. And they came back and said it's definitely an extinct subspecies of the plains zebra. Now, once you had that, you could do selective breeding. In other words, if you want fat sheep, you take fat sheep out of a herd and gradually breed fat sheep together. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say fat because that's body shaming in this woke day. I'm kidding. But you end up with a subspecies of fat sheep. And for 38 years, they have been selectively breeding these plains zebras, the ones with the slightly fewer stripes on the rump, darker rump. And now there are 2 herds of quagga happily trotting around the Cape. And nobody has heard of this story. It's the first time an extinct subspecies has been brought back from extinction, done by South Africans in South Africa, an amazing mystery. And I think it's when you see the picture, at one stage in the program, they sort of have a photo of a quagga, which they then fold into a live quagga running around the plains in Cape Town. So those are the things we've looked at. As I say, it's done on research. They also do market research to find out which things really appeal to people. But what's really struck me, Alex, is the depth, the number of stories in South Africa that wouldn't just appeal to a South African audience, to a world audience. These are amazing, amazing mysteries. And I get goosebumps even now talking about them.
Well, if that voice sounds familiar, I'm chatting to John Robbie. He is the host of Great African Mysteries, which is on the History Channel as of August. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with more questions for John about the show after this.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
Hey, just taking a moment during the break to share some exciting news. The Sandton Times Hour has made significant strides and is now nominated for the 2024 APVA Podcast of the Year Award. This achievement is all thanks to your incredible support. I've one more favor to ask you though. Please take a moment to vote for the Sandton Times Hour for Podcast of the Year. Every vote counts, and your participation is vital in deciding the winner. So you'll find the voting link in the show description wherever you listen to the Sandton Times Hour. Voting closes on 10 August 2024. Now, let's get back to the show.
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour.
So John Robbie hosts Great African Mysteries on the History Channel on DSTV, and he's still with me to chat about Season 2 of this very insightful historical series. And John, you were talking about some of the topics, some of the content you're going through in Season 2. And I get the sense that there's also an element of changing perception and understanding of Africa's rich history through this program.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know the checkered history of Africa. We know that much of it was not written down. There was a long oral tradition right across the continent. Colonialists came and, as was done in those days, colonized vast swathes of Africa. And as a result, I think it was it Winston Churchill? Somebody said history is written by the winners. And of course, the colonialists, they took history and they tweaked it to suit themselves. And regardless of whether you can see the evil in this in the past, you're influenced by it. And for example, my perception, as I would consider myself, a fairly reasonably fair-minded progressive person. And yet my perception always is that civilization, in inverted commas, arrived in the Cape and gradually moved northwards in South Africa. And it's been hosting this series and looking at the wonderful research that's been done by historians. You realize, in fact, that wasn't the case at all. There was a thriving civilization importing, exporting, doing ironwork, doing amazing work. Sadly, some of it was, or a lot of it was with ivory, with skins, and then later on with slaves, with gold, etc., which was, again, at the time, many people thought that was just a normal way of life. But the point I'm making is that there was this massive, very well-defined civilization and trade routes coming through, of all places, Madagascar, which again, we tend to think of as a sort of a backwater. It was a huge stopping off point. The Limpopo River was also huge. And when you look at the extent of it, I mean, we look at places like Mapamgubwe, which we know about, the golden rhinoceros and so on. But there's even a theory now. One of the mysteries is what happened to Mapamgubwe. One of the theories is that some of the people came and founded Thulamela. What happened to Thulamela? Where did the people go, etc.? And these are questions that still have to be asked. So, as I say, we've presented a huge number of facts, research, opinion, alternatives, but also they are mysteries. And I'm hoping that more and more people will get interested and more people will get involved. And hopefully history that I hated in school because it was taught so badly to me will come alive to many people. How shall I say? The baton will be handed over.
How do you balance the way the stories are told for local audiences, and when I say local, South African, or Pan-African, versus international audiences that probably also don't have too much context as to what's going on in South Africa?
Well, I think that's the job of the host and the script writer. And it was a very collaborative process, I'm delighted to say. And as somebody who came from rugby, which was my original background, if you like, where obviously the team is of paramount importance, and then went into radio. And you know yourself, although radio can be a very creative and a backstabbing environment, if you're successful in radio, it's not the host, it's a team. It's a team environment, producers, technicians, all sorts of things. It's a team environment. And I was very lucky at 702 to be involved in one of the greatest teams of all time. And I was thrilled to come into this organization with Clive Morris Productions, who are the production house involved and the History Channel. And it's all about teamwork. It's about teamwork. It's about working together. It's about having input, etc., in what you want to do. And the end result then is coming out with something that has to appeal to, how shall I say, academics. There have to be historians who can look at this. And again, this has been one of the great reaction we've had. Academic scientists have come after this series and said, gee, that was well done. It was well put together. But also it has to be presented in such a way that the excitement is there for, if I can say, the layman to say, I actually understand that. What he's saying is, yes, I get what he's saying about genetics, about DNA, selective breeding. I now understand that. And so if you like, it's taking two ends of the spectrum and appealing to both and marrying somewhere in the middle that ends up with a hugely entertaining and exciting product. And I leave it up for you, Alex, when you've watched it. If you say I'm gilding the lily, I'm overselling it, or in fact, I'm telling the truth. I bet it's the latter.
Well, listen, I enjoyed history at school, parts of it as well, and I always enjoy watching these sort of things because you always can learn something new, and there's always new discoveries to be made. And I'm glad that you've also touched on the fact that it is a fine blending act of getting the scientific element, maybe the slightly dry element of history, and putting it together with interesting storytelling. Because if you don't have either one, it can be a bit of a mess.
Absolutely. I mean, you've put your finger on it, you know. We always talk about radio being theatre of the mind. Well, maybe this is also theatre of the mind with your eyes involved as well. And the other great thing is that, I mean, obviously you're dealing with some topics that are extremely old and there are different theories that surround them. But I've been hugely impressed, as I say, working on this series with Sian Clarke at the, how can I say, the ethical way she's gone about it. And she has presented things. And also we often discover that a mistake had been made. So, for example, it might require another trip back to the north of the Kruger Park just to film something, a slight interview. There were occasions when a word or a phrase was wrong. And you could say, hang on, if you're absolutely applying a rigorous scientific process, that is not 100% correct. So I would travel into the studio, redo the whole thing again, etc. And that's what we've done. So it's an honest attempt. And of course, if there are things that are wrong or things that are incorrect or new information, comes to light, then we'd love to hear from people about it, because it's not a closed door history. It's open, it's looking at the future, but also looking at the past with modern eyes.
There you have it. Great African Mysteries with John Robbie is back on the History Channel. Let me just get this right. It premiered on the 3rd of August 2024 on DSTV channel 186. There have been a few repeats of it, and there's also an additional one on Tuesday the 6th of August 2024 at 25 past 1 in the afternoon. And I'm sure there might be a couple of more, considering how interesting the topic is. John, it's been such an honor and pleasure to reconnect with you on the occasion of your latest TV project.
Alex, great chatting to you again, and congratulations on what you've done. And to everyone out there, we're trying to create something that is world class. That's what the reaction was after the first series. I think this one is even better, but I am just a little bit biased.
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour.
And as we get into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, don't forget that if you caught something interesting or intriguing or something that caught your attention on the show this week, but you didn't get all the details, well, you can hop onto the sandtontimes.co today and explore the comprehensive show notes. Those are the notes that tell you a little bit more, with a couple of more links, some breakdowns, some further reading, and you don't have to worry about trying to jot things down while you listen. And also don't forget that you can connect with the Sandton Times on social media, at Sandton Times on whatever your preferred social media platform is. Well, I came across something very interesting, and interesting because I personally had sort of experienced this, and this is about sort of going out in the evenings. I don't know about you, but I was at a dinner the other night, and there were people saying, how less frequently they're going out at night for a myriad of reasons. They prefer going to events during the day or in the morning or in the afternoon, but going out at night, not really their thing. And if they do want to go out, they want to go out a little bit earlier at night. And there's definitely been a significant shift in the way we behave. And it seems like we're not the only South Africans that are choosing to go out earlier in the evening. This seems to be aligning with a global trend. And there's data that's based on this new insight from CGA. They did a global reach survey with 30,000 respondents, and they highlighted the changing patterns and preferences among on-premise consumers who frequent restaurants and bars. And here to chat to me is Amy Horgan. She's the client manager at CGA by Nielsen IQ. And Amy, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit more about this. What are some of the key findings from the CGA by NIQ's recent How to Win in the On-Premise study that you guys did? It's obviously highlighted the shift that people are looking to wine and dine earlier in South Africa.
So I would say that there are a number of factors for this. I think the first one is COVID. In South Africa, we obviously had, restrictions on how late we could stay out. And I think we all got a little bit used to the earlier day parts. I know I certainly did. So yeah, I think COVID was really the catalyst for this changing behavior. And then I think another thing is safety. We know that obviously that is a concern within South Africa, and that we see from a data point of view that people are choosing to go out earlier, just so maybe they're not on the roads late at night. There is also this growing trend of focusing on health. I know when I'm in Cape Town, I'm a little bit embarrassed. All my friends are doing marathons and I'm still a bit of a couch potato. But people want to be fresh the next day. We don't want to wake up with a hangover, because that means we're losing out on another good day. So I think we're also seeing that shift just because of the health aspect. And, these are global trends. In New York, pre-COVID, the prime time for eating and drinking out was 8 p.m. And now that has shifted to 6 p.m.
Well, I kind of started this with a bit of a personal reference, and I have to agree with you on some of these things. I mean, you mentioned crime. I was going to add load shedding to the factor as well. So nobody really wants to be driving around town when the lights are out and the traffic lights are out, and that just adds obviously to the crime factor. And you might hit a pothole somewhere along the line as well, so you want to avoid that as well. The COVID lockdown sort of conditioning that we all went through is a very interesting observation. So how do you think that these trends in terms of early evening outings are impacting sort of things like drinks? I mean, you mentioned now people going for more non-alcoholic options. Obviously, late night drinking also means sort of stronger alcohol. I mean, people probably start with a glass of wine and beer. They probably move on to harder stuff later in the night. If they're not out late at night anymore, what does that mean for some of these harder spirits?
I think that we can go into, value and quality here. I think there's a growing trend towards moderating alcohol consumption. We see that 37% of consumers are drinking less, while only 13% are drinking more. This trend is particularly notable among younger adults, and this is driven by those health aspects that we talked about before, and also financial considerations. So, instead of those hard spirit drinks, we see that there is a growing trend towards lower alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, particularly in the South African context. In terms of harder spirits, I think there is still a large consumption, with people more leaning into the quality aspect of a drink. So, for instance, we see that particularly in South Africa, there is a big over-index towards luxury drinks. And for the most cases would mean a luxury spirit. What we see is that instead of having, say, 4 value drinks, a consumer is going to go for that one luxury drink. And I think it's just consumption has shifted earlier.
I'm with you, yeah. I mean, look, another interesting stat that I picked up here as well is that 57% like to have different drinks in the on-premise than they do at home, which I thought was very interesting. And the figure rises to 65% among 18 to 34-year-olds. So basically, people are prepared to try things that they wouldn't normally have at home in sort of the when they go out with friends or family or whoever they go out with. And then also that 69% of respondents said that they would buy a drink they have enjoyed in the on-premise at home as well. So they've gone out, they've sampled whatever they've tried, and they said, oh, this is very nice. And they then go back to the shop and they then purchase this item and take it home, which I thought was quite an interesting observation.
Yeah, so we have seen that, consumer experimentation is really what people are wanting in the on-premise. And there's a number of factors for this. There's the social currency of being out in the on-premise. And as you can see, 65% of 18 to 34-year-olds, which is that younger demographic, they also, the social media generation. Going out and experimenting is not just about the alcohol or, what it's mixed with, but also the visual presentation. And a couple of years ago, I don't know if you've been in Cape Town to the Art of Duplicity, but they have, all sorts of wacky and wonderful cocktails. And what really stands out is their presentation. And I had a KFC bucket cocktail with a chicken leg, a spiked ice cream chicken leg, and it was just fantastic. And, I broadcast it to the world. We also see that experimentation is more pronounced in the on-premise because it's less of a risk. So, if you go to the bottle store and you buy an expensive spirit and you come home and, try to doctor your own cocktail, the outcome may not be as great as if you had just gone to the on-premise and experimented there. Yeah, I also think that when you're on the on-premise, you are encouraged to experiment, particularly with bartenders. They tell the story of the drink. And, when you experiment there, then, of course, if you like something, you're gonna want to go home and recreate it somehow or try that spirit. So, yeah, it's really important, I think, to cater to the experimental need of consumers, particularly in these challenging economic times, because that's really what is going to drive your sales out of the on-premise as well.
Well, very interesting there. I've been chatting to Amy Horgan, client manager at CGA by Nielsen IQ, with some insights there as to how we are going out earlier and earlier, as opposed to becoming night owls, and also, of course, trying to stay fresh the next day and choosing to go with sort of healthier options or non-alcoholic options. So, Amy, it's been great to chat to you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Great. It was amazing to chat to you too.
Well, we're going to take a quick musical break and more of the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At Sandton Times.
Well, the Eat Out Awards are sort of around the corner, and I thought it would be a good chance to start chatting about this. It's only in 2025 when I say around the corner. But then again, it's also August, and it feels like the year's almost over, and we just felt like it had just started. But here to chat to me about this award that awards culinary excellence is Melissa Cumming. She's the head of the owned brand division at New Media. Eat Out forms part of that division. And they've come up with a slightly different judging plan this year. But Melissa will elaborate on this. So, Melissa, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Melissa, I believe you've been part of the Eat Out Woolworths Restaurant Awards for quite some time. I know last year, as it is with a lot of awards, there's always people who are absolutely thrilled to have won an award. And then there's always some people who feel slightly differently about it and always feel like things could be changed, improved, twisted. Tell me a bit from your side, how things have gone and how things have changed as we go into 2025.
You know, we've actually been around for such a long time. The awards have actually evolved and changed over the last 26 years since their inception. We actually have moved into a star rating process since COVID, but actually pre-COVID, we had a ranking system, which was actually very different to what we're doing today. So each and every year, the system has changed and been optimized. And I think as the brand's size and impact in the industry has grown, there's obviously an increasing sense of responsibility and commitment to the industry that we serve and what we need to do to make sure that our awards process and our systems are as good as they can be, and at the highest standards that they should be. We really do represent the best of the best in the country when it comes to the awards that we hand out. We want to stand up to the same standard of being the best. We started the star rating system, as I said, after COVID. 2022 and 2023 were the first years that 1, 2, and 3 stars were handed out, along with our special awards, which are also chosen by the brand. And that's everything from the Chef of the Year to the Chef, Best Service, Wine Service, Mixology Award, Best New Restaurant. So it's a combination of special awards that we hand out, as well as the stars. So the star rating system created an opportunity for a lot more than we did in the top 20 ranking. If a restaurant scores 70 or above, it's eligible for either a 1, 2, or a 3 star. It's a lot more inclusive. I think in 2022, there were 30 odd restaurants that received stars, and that actually grew in 2023 to 51 stars that were handed out. You might have to correct me on that first year, 2022. I can't remember the exact number, but last year we handed out 51 stars. Obviously, that's a lot more inclusive than the top 20 ranking from the years before COVID. It's been a learning process for us, this new rating system. We've got incredible technology that sits behind it. Our partners at SwipeIX have built an incredible scorecard tool that the judges have access to, and that's also getting worked on and adapted and changed every year. So it's basically it's a really robust scorecard that sits behind those points that add up to 100. And within that scorecard, we've got different areas that we judge, things like taste and technique, menu composition and presentation, beverages, ambiance, perceived value. There's various different categories that make up the scorecard. And actually that scorecard has been tweaked and changed over the last 3 years. From year 1 to 2, there were changes. From last year to this year, there have also been changes. Those changes this year were really informed by the research that we did in the first quarter. So post the awards, we met up with quite a lot of chefs and restaurateurs to discuss their star ratings and to give feedback. So we had some face-to-face feedback sessions with the chefs, and we started to receive feedback about the star rating system and the feedback that they were receiving. And then post that, we actually did a major research project where we went to the industry. We got over 500 responses from the industry, from a combination of chefs, patrons, diners, restaurateurs, around the process and around the scorecard and around the way we judge. And all of that has now informed this new model that we've launched with judging starting now in July.
Well, you've also got 8 anonymous judges that you've selected to help you
Right.
with this.
Yes,
What kind of qualification do you need to have? I mean, I know there's a lot of people who've watched every season of MasterChef and feel like they can now sit in a restaurant and establish what is good for the palate and what isn't. I'm assuming these 8 judges have a little bit more under their belt than a couple of seasons of the Food Channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually used to do anonymous judging pre-COVID. We made the choice to actually make the judges known post-COVID, but we've gone back to anonymous judging. But that's also stems from the research. So as I said, all the changes we've made to the model this year all comes back to what the industry has come back to us with and how they've responded. And 75% of respondents suggested that anonymous judging was the way to go. So that's the decision that we've made this year. So yeah, in terms of the skill sets, we also put that out to the industry in terms of what was the most valuable and what did they consider to be the most valuable on the judging panel. The top 4 skill sets came through as obviously qualified chefs, restaurant owners or managers or previous restaurant owners or managers, as well as sommeliers and food editors. So those were the top 4 that came out. We gave a range of different skill sets, but those were the top 4. And we've got in this year's panel, we've got a really diverse range geographically, male, female, race, in terms of experience, years of experience, as I said, from sommeliers to previous restaurant owners, managers, and qualified chefs, and food editors. So it's a really great mix.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, what does it mean to some of these establishments winning this kind of award? I mean, everyone sort of very lightly says, yeah, no, we're not doing it for the awards and, we're doing it for the patrons, or we're doing it because we love cooking. But clearly this does mean a little bit to someone.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there are definitely chefs that don't do this for the awards, but I think everyone knows how much passion and energy and time goes into this industry. Being a chef, working in the kitchen, it's a real labor of love. I think everyone loves a little bit of recognition when they put so much time and effort into their work. So yeah, it does mean a lot. I mean, in terms of winning, obviously, as I said, we've been around for a very long time, and we've got, as I said, our size and our impact in the industry has really grown. And I think being acknowledged as one of the best in the country by Eat Out is a real pat on the back for a lot of chefs. And I think it does mean a lot to them, I guess from a monetary perspective, there's no actual monetary awards. There are some donations by our different sponsors of our special awards, but it's we've had feedback from the industry previously where when a restaurant has come through the Eat Out rankings or been awarded a star, that in the year following they actually have to staff up in terms of being able to keep up with the demand, and it's a really driven demand for their establishment. So we really believe in what we're doing, and we actually as part of the research we did actually ask the industry, we've got some key objectives of what Eat Out's about, and one of that is ensuring that we have a positive impact on the industry, and that we do shine a light on the different restaurants and chefs in the industry, and are we relevant in those objectives, and are we meeting those? And it came back extremely positive that people do see the relevance in what we're doing, which is why we put so much time and effort into these awards, and why we've taken such a hard long look at our model this year, and about making sure that it is absolutely optimized, and that we're taking the feedback on board, and we're building something incredible.
Well, there you have it. The 2025 Eat Out Woolworths Restaurant Awards process starts right now, and it'll all crescendo in April next year. And I'm sure we'll still hear a little bit more about this as the process unfolds, and of course as the awards start unfolding early next year. Melissa Cumming, head of owned brand division at New Media Eat Out, forms part of that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Right, and with that, it's all we have time for this week on the Sandton Times Hour. Is always available on all good podcast platforms, including Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Podcast Party, and so many more. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, as so many of you do, and thank you so much for doing that. Of course, connect on social media at Sandton Times, and also visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And just talking about the social media, we had a clip that we uploaded on Instagram that has absolutely exploded. And if you understand sort of the algorithms on organic versus promoted, etc., this one's completely organic. It just absolutely blew my mind as to how well this clip has done in the last week. So if you're interested to see which one it is, it's the last video we posted on Instagram. Go check it out. Anyway, thank you to all our guests who made time to be on the show this week, and of course the teamwork that goes into making the show happen every single week. Sometimes we have a bit of a snag, but otherwise we always deliver. Thank you for listening, and we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.